So for our final dive into this world, I'm delighted to welcome Debi, Keyte, Hartland today. Debi is a passionate advocate for the arts in early childhood education. She works as an independent consultant, coach and artist educator, exploring creative and reflective approaches that foster curiosity, inquiry and expression. So please give a warm welcome to Debi.
Oh, thank you, Jenny there, and thank you for the invitation to close what has been a wonderful day today. A rich day, I think, of conversation about young children's creativity, but also those fertile conditions that enable it to germinate, to grow and evolve. And what I'd like to do in this final section is to think together about what can be made possible when we believe in the creative and expressive potential of our young children. And I wanted to start off just reintroducing myself to you as a 4-year-old here. I don't know if you can guess which one is me. The pink arrow might help you out there. So this is me, aged about 4. I'm a summer-born child. It's not long after starting at the local infant school where I lived in Smethwick in the Black Country. And I'm here with some of my new school friends here. I didn't talk much, and my mum told me that I didn't talk until I was about 3, actually. So I was quite a late starter to conversation, but I communicated, and I communicated through drawing and making things and dancing. And all of these were strong ways for me in which to communicate and were ways of expressing myself as also as a way of learning in the world. But at 4, there was one thing that was really important to me, and that was Shane here. He was the love of my life, and I was going to marry him. I didn't. And if Shane is in the audience anywhere, one day somebody is going to say, "Hello, Deb." And on my first day at school, I can remember the absolute joy of being given a small tin of crayons in a tobacco tin, and it smelt of tobacco, and I was really excited because I loved to draw. And here I was, being gifted something with my name on the front of the tin. These were mine. And this is a picture that I drew at the time as well. A rather good picture, I think. I'm a bit biased, I know, but a rather good picture of a crocodile. And yes, it's purple, but who cares? But it's got fantastic scales. 3 legs, because the other one's hidden, of course, in perspective. That's a trick of the eye. But really good. But I think if we take away some of these things, what was really important on this page was perhaps not the crocodile and everything I knew about that crocodile's texture and what it looked like and the knowledge I had about that, but the sentence that was next to it with a capital T and a full stop. Was this the most important thing on that page? And this is what I want to explore with you today. So let's not forget that for millennia, young children have been drawing, have been creating, have been playing with materials of the world in creative ways. So none of this is brand new, of course. It's always been part of children's engagement with the world, their creative engagement. And so I really want to underline this point, that creativity and playing with materials, but also playing in the world of ideas, isn't just something that's educational, but really is a characteristic of what makes us human beings. It's our humanity. And to deny children's creativity and their expression, their creative expression, or to ignore it, is to deny the humanity of young children. And I'm really inspired by Loris Malaguzzi, who is synonymous with what has become known as the Reggio Emilia approach in in northern Italy. And he wrote a poem, a poem that's become very famous, which is a metaphor for the extraordinary potentials of all children in how they build knowledge, how they think creatively, how they invent worlds, how they communicate in more than a sentence with a capital T at the front and a full stop at the end, who communicate more than spoken word, and who reason and dream about the world that they can co-create with each other. And the poem talks about how culture, how schooling can steal 99 of the 100 languages of children. So I invite you, if you don't know this poem already, to go and find it, because I think it's a real call to action for our youngest children. Because all children are artists, as Bob and Roberta Smith, the artist here, says. And therefore, all our schools, or all the places where we see children inhabiting, should be places of art and creativity. And what children need are creative companions, ready to listen to children, their ideas, their theories, and their fascinations, and to help foster and generate and amplify their creativity. So I've been looking back recently at some creative germs of an idea, or as Susan said this morning, these small happenings of young children that have really resonated deeply with me as examples of children's creativity. And I really wanted to share just a few of those stories with you today. They're quite joyful. So, here is Lottie Boo, and she's made some repeated drawings here on a small set of post-it notes, experimenting. I hope you can see these. It looks very wrinkly behind me. We can see in these images here of a snail that she's used, how she changes and plays around with that position of the snail, the different ways that she's exploring that spiral sense of the snail here, and how she combines it with other features that she knows about. This here is an example for me of an interactive and iterative process, a process full of her experimentation and exploration. But it's also a communication, just like my crocodile was, of what she knows about snails as being part of a community, part of a family. I love this one. It's beautiful, isn't it? Can you see that snail right at the beginning, right in the middle? So drawing, we could say, is a language in which children are noticing the world around them. And John Matthews talks about drawing as being the basis of all thinking. And just like Leonardo da Vinci, who used drawing to make sense of the world around him and to invent and to explore new ideas, here Ella is doing exactly the same. She's noticing how that small snail moves, looking carefully at it. Children are creative scientists too, creatively looking to figure something out, creatively expressing. Staying with snails, another small happening here. And often these small happenings are occurring right underneath our noses. And this is another drawing, but this time with clay. An animal, when I was observing, started to shape the clay, and I thought I knew what was going to happen here. I thought he was thinking about what a snail looked like, but he wasn't. He was thinking about a snail's brain. And curling that clay around, thinking with and thinking through the materials, playing with the materiality of this clay here, but also playing with ideas about a snail's brain. And over time, it increases with complexity, bigger still, brain waves coming out. And not only is it visually beautiful, but he described it as a brain that responds to rain spots when it falls. And you can see the spots here are not just decorative, but they are spots of rain that for Anmol were activating the thinking in that snail's brain. And when you think about it, snails spend a lot of time in the rain, and it's often when you see them. So I am sure that Anmol knew this too. So when children are so capable, so creative and imaginative, so able to communicate what they discover and find out and think about the world, why are there still occasions when as adults we are stealing the 99 languages of children by doing things like this? When children are really quite capable and can do things like this. Children are artists. Children are creative. So now to something slightly bigger than a snail, our solar system. All done on a piece of A4 paper in about 5 minutes. So this is Mia, and she drew her working theory of how day and night happen. And it might not be wholly accurate. I don't know if you can see here, the dark shape is the moon. We've got the sun on the other side. We've got the planets in the middle, and she's drawn like arrows to say which way. They turn to face the moon, and then it's night, and then the planets turn to face the sun, and then it is day. So not wholly accurate, but this is evidence of a 4-year-old, 4 years old, in the area of learning known as astrophysics, and thinking about celestial bodies and cosmic phenomena, and how they interact and shape the universe. Children are incredible. And in this example, this stunning tree here, this blossom tree, plays a starring role. And children for this nursery school had written to the local authority gardeners to ask them, please, can you stop spraying the weeds with chemicals? And can you please not mow the lawn as often as you are? Because we really want to increase and find out what other creatures might live in our garden. And so the children spent many hours. It's an example, what we might call a slow pedagogy. They spent many hours over many days, over many weeks in this small garden area, looking at this tree, noticing what was with it, what visited it, what lived underneath it. Over time, they told stories and invented stories about this tree. They'd climb up it to see it from another point of view. They'd observe closely what visited it. And they drew it, and they danced around it, and they made and invented games. And all these different ways of observing and encountering this tree and the place of the tree provided these new ways of seeing, and seeing it as connected to the rest of the ecology in that garden. And this is just a small happening from a whole year of children researching their garden space. And these two girls, Alice and Hope, had drawn the tree. And this is towards the end of summer, so it's not in blossom anymore. And Alice said, after drawing it with her friend, she said, we should add the blossom. It would make the tree its best beautiful again. I love that idea. Not just beautiful, but your best beautiful. Hope said, the tree, it wants to be pink again. And Alice said, yeah, it wants to be beautiful again. And Hope said, yeah, it's beautiful. Alice said, it will love it. It will love it. And the bees. And the bees will love it too. Hope said, all the bees will love it. And the butterflies. It's food for the bees. They will love it. Their beautiful home. And so this drawing that they had thought was finished was then re-elaborated with paint and the blossom brought back for the bees and for the butterflies. And what they're doing here is really evaluating what they're drawing, what it meant, what it communicated, what it expressed. They collaborated together, sharing ideas with one another and absolutely delighting in that process of learning and creating together. And also learning, I'm sure, with the tree. And creativity here for me is about fostering an intimate relationship between each other, but also the tree and its inhabitants and visitors, as expressed and communicated here. So we might say then that these human faculties of thinking, the creativity and the expression, must be raised up in equality and alongside and be as important as things like literacy and numeracy. I'm not asking for it to be more than, but just equal to, and not relegated to a special week or a special time, but a sustainable part of daily life for young children. And Margaret Macmillan, she's sister of Rachel Macmillan, who set up the first open-air nursery school for children in England, said way back in 1904, it is the creative power of the mind which gives life to all work. And it's this creative power of children's minds which brings this vitality and vibrancy to all that they do. And for me, this is really what we are seeing in these examples, these joyful examples that you've seen here and we've seen throughout the course of today too. And in enabling children's creativity and their creative expression, which connects to all the ways in which they learn with and get to know about the world, is the work to be done. And Carlina Rinaldi of Reggio Emilia says that to support children's questions, to support their inquiries and to enable them to seek the answers and explanations to their own inquiries requires that us as adults become a companion to them, and that we need to think about how we can respond to children's search for the meaning of life, and how we can respond to their constant questions, their whys and hows. So let's now, just to end, watch this very short film, a few minutes, that for me is an example that really makes visible how adults can help children to find the meaning of what they do and experience. It's a film that comes from a Swedish preschool that I was really lucky to be able to work with in Stockholm, with young children aged from 1 to 3. The children spend a day of their week in the local forest area, and the adults had seen these children constantly in the puddles. And in those puddles, they would take sticks and they would make bubbles in the puddles. And they took this very small happening, making bubbles in the puddles, and they thought, how can we enable our children to continue this research? How can we help them to carry on their inquiries, their creative research into the phenomena of bubbles? Now, I must admit, when they told me that they were going to do this, I just thought, what, bubbles? You just put a wand in and go, and that's it, over and done. You know, you might pop a bubble, that's it. And I was astounded at the level of complexity that they brought to this work. And again, it's an example of what can happen if we give and enable children the time to really think, unhurried time, but deep and complex time. And so you'll see in this film how the educators responded to the children, believing in their competence and believing in their ability to make and express meaning in the research of their bubbles. It's almost like a bubble laboratory that they've got here. And you'll see how different mediums, different art forms, different languages that are really capable of communicating are proposed to the children alongside their investigations. And you'll also see the use of digital media and technology within this, which enabled the children to transform and play, create and express their thoughts, their wonders and their discoveries. It's far more than just blowing them. what we have there are a group of Swedish teachers who have really attended to children's ideas, to children's creativity, and documented in English, which I think is rather good. Hence why there's a few spelling mistakes that I'm sure some of you may have spotted there, but fantastic. And for me, this is an example of a slow pedagogy and what is possible with unhurried learning, in which being attentive to children's pace, rhythm and interests enables them to revisit their ideas over time. So then, just to end then, the adult companion for the creative child is doing all of these things. They're attuning and believing in children, listening, attending, curating materials, activating, amplifying, responding. But to enable the creative agency of children, we need adults with agency too, with creative agency of their own. And that can be difficult. But each of us, and I want to end on a really hopeful note for today, each of us has agency to be the companion that each and every child needs, as these examples have shown today, these small creative happenings. So I think it's now the time, more than ever, to make children's creativity, their expression, their voice, their ideas and inquiries central to all that we do everywhere. And I know that I don't need to convince you here today, but we do need to convince others who may have, well, forgotten. So my call to action is this. It's to document children's 100 languages, to make visible children's creativity, their creative expression and their thinking. Because when it is clearly articulated and clearly made evident, then it is very difficult to shut it down and ignore it. Because the child says, the 100 is there. Thank you.